You married a nobody, a complete nobody. The words tore through the wedding hall like a blade, slicing the music, the whispers, the fragile joy of the moment into stunned silence. And for a heartbeat, it felt as if even the walls had leaned in to listen. Aunt Namsa stood at the entrance, her fingers shaking as she pointed at Tandawai, her voice thick with fury and certainty, promising suffering, hunger, and regret, as though she were announcing a curse rather than an opinion. Tandawai felt her knees weaken, her hands trembling around the small bouquet she could barely afford, while beside her stood Sio, her husband, his shoulders slightly hunched, his eyes fixed on his scuffed shoes as if they were the only safe place to look. The few guests present whispered, some amused, some embarrassed, some already convinced they were witnessing the beginning of a disaster. But this moment had roots far deeper than this single outburst, roots that stretched back months earlier to a cramped hair salon in Johannesburg, where Tandawai worked long hours washing hair, sweeping floors, and practicing braids on patient clients, earning just enough to survive and send a little money home to her mother in the township. She was known for her beauty, for the quiet confidence in her smile, for the way men with cars and clean shoes lingered too long just to talk to her, offering dinners, gifts, and promises of comfort, all of which she politely declined without ever fully explaining why. Then one rainy afternoon, when the sky poured without mercy, a man stepped into the salon dripping wet, clutching a broken umbrella, his clothes worn thin by time and misfortune, his voice soft and apologetic as he asked for something to dry himself with so he wouldn't dirty the floor. The owner snapped at him to leave, disgust sharp in her tone, but Tandawai moved before she could think, offering a towel and a kindness that surprised them both. His name was Sifo, and there was something in his eyes, intelligence dulled but not destroyed, shame mixed with dignity, that made her listen when he spoke of sleeping wherever he could, of mistakes that had cost him everything, of prison, loss, and rejection. Where others saw danger or failure, Tandawai saw honesty, and with that honesty came compassion. Sandwiches shared, conversations stolen between clients, and a connection that deepened slowly and quietly until it became impossible to ignore. As weeks passed, she helped him find small jobs, encouraged him when hope threatened to disappear, and in return he gave her laughter, gratitude, and a respect she had never felt from the men who flaunted their wealth. When he asked her to marry him, laying bare his lack of money, home, and status, she said yes, not because she was blind to reality, but because she saw beyond it, and that decision ignited a storm of outrage from her family and community, culminating in this very wedding hall where love stood small but stubborn against ridicule, anger, and public humiliation. The first years of their marriage were exactly as Aunt Namsa had predicted on the surface. Hard, exhausting, and unforgiving, as Tandawai and Sifo lived in a leaking shack where rainwater collected in buckets and sleep came on a thin mattress laid directly on the floor, where meals were simple and scarce, and every rand was counted twice before being spent. Tandawai worked tirelessly at the salon, while Sifo took whatever work he could find, his hands blistered and his back aching. Yet each night they sat together in that tiny space, planning, studying, saving, and refusing to let bitterness take root. Slowly, painfully, they built something from nothing. A fruit stand bought with savings, scraped together through sacrifice, long days that began before sunrise, careful learning, small innovations, and relentless consistency. Where others expected failure, the business grew, then multiplied. And with each step forward, Sifo remembered where he had been, choosing to hire people others ignored, offering second chances the way he had once received one. Years passed, and the laughter that once followed them turned into whispers of disbelief as success replaced struggle, as the shack became a house, as survival turned into stability, and then into abundance. When they returned to the same community hall years later, no longer as a curiosity, but as proof of what perseverance and faith could build, the room was filled not with mockery, but with stunned applause, apologies, and humbled silence, especially from those who had spoken the loudest against them. Held no desire for revenge, only a quiet satisfaction born of knowing they had stayed true to themselves when it mattered most. Driving home that night, hand in hand, they reflected not on wealth gained, but on dignity preserved, on love tested and strengthened, on the simple truth that had guided them from the beginning, that character weighs more than money, that mistakes do not define a lifetime, and that believing in someone when they have nothing can change everything. Their story spread not because it was perfect, but because it was real, a reminder whispered from one household to another that sometimes the bravest choice is the one everyone else laughs at, and that the loudest curses often fade into silence when met with patience, work, and unwavering love.